Well, good evening again, and we're going to continue. This will be the second part. The second part is going to be entitled "Suffering, Agape Love, and Recovery." So again, it's a lot of material that we're going to go through in a fairly short period of time, but I think you'll understand the flow. Hopefully, you'll understand the flow, and we'll be able to tie things together as we have been in the first section. Okay, so we're going to talk about we're going to talk about. Let's get to the slide. That's important. So we're going to start out by defining what love is. So usually when somebody says love, oftentimes anyway, they are referring to the contextualized romantic love that we see in movies and in music and in popular culture. But that's just one of four different kinds. And we'll talk about these all four of them together in the lower part of this slide. So it's often defined in four very different or distinct ways. The first one, storge love, is a natural affection. It's the love that just connects a parent and a baby. That baby and that parent have an affection that will be lifelong, and in one form or another will be very distinct from the other types of love. Philia love is that deep friendship, that enormous respect and willingness to put yourself on the line for another person who is not in your family or your spouse or your children, but a friend. And that deep friendship is termed philia love. Eros love is the romanticized, contextualized romantic love that we talked about at the top of this slide. Romantic love, sexual love is what Eros love is. Now, agape love is the highest form of love. It's unconditional love. It's very difficult to describe unconditional love other than, as many of you probably know and understand, that acceptance and respect are at the basis of a foundational relationship. And agape love is the highest form. Now, agape love, some would suggest, is certainly not obtainable, but we can strive toward that. And we'll be talking more about that in just a few minutes. So to live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering. This is a pretty important distinction between simply life is suffering, which I think most of us would agree is true. But if we can find meaning in that suffering, is that suffering really suffering, or is it part of something bigger or different? That's something that we can think about. Suffering, grief, loss, and death are a part of life. It doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are. You should be able to pick out periods in your life, even if it's a young life, in which you suffered a great deal, usually around death and loss, but also could be suffering in other ways. We'll talk about those a little bit later in a couple of slides from now. And we cannot pick and choose as to if we are to suffer, but we all can make sense of our suffering. And I think that's our task in terms of suffering, is when it occurs, we know it, we feel it, and it's very bothersome and distressing and sometimes debilitating. But if we know in that same moment that we feel debilitated, that there is hope, then I think the suffering becomes, the meaning of that suffering starts to come very clear. And when we can make sense of our suffering, as I said before, I don't think we could really term it as suffering anymore because of the learning that comes from that and the making the sense of what that suffering is about. So that's our task. That's the goal that we have, to make sense of suffering. And this is a personal case. This is my wife. She was diagnosed with end-stage colon cancer on her 53rd birthday. We were in total shock for a day or two. I'm not sure that we did very much in that first couple of days, except just wander around in a state of shock. That was about all we could really do. On day 3, though, things started to change. She asked what she was supposed to do. And my response to her is what you've always done, and that is to teach us. Whatever this is. Of course, at that point, we had no idea how long she would live, or maybe she would survive it. We had no idea. But I did tell her that whatever was the outcome, that she would teach us what that journey is about. It's a journey that we all have to make, and I don't know that she was eager to do that, but it certainly gave her purpose, and it started to give her a way of making meaning of this suffering. The answer was to provide meaning to her suffering, and she did not suffer. She accepted, she made meaning, and she moved on. And then us who are left behind, my 2 children and myself, then there was our job to make meaning of the suffering. And I think each one of us did in our own way. So love, we can think of love as an anecdote to these times that I talked about a few minutes ago, and just the carnage and the death and the continuing anger that people have towards each other. There was a mass murder again in the United States yesterday, in which 18 people were killed. And it's senseless. It makes absolutely no sense. The suffering is extreme. We see it on the news every single day. Children losing their lives, mothers losing their children, children losing their mothers, and it just goes on and on and on. So the antidote to all this is love, and not love for chocolate or sexual love or even friendship love, but agape love. Agape love was described over 2 centuries ago and is a mainstay of Christian and other religious beliefs. Agape love has the following characteristics: patience, selflessness, acceptance, hope, and positive regard. Let's look at those characteristics one more time. Patience, selflessness, acceptance, hope, and positive regard. So agape love, again, it's a goal, it's an aspiration. Some would suggest that in this world it's impossible, but we can move toward it. And I think that's the important concept right this minute, is to know that you are capable of moving towards agape love. Agape love is spiritual, as I said before, aspirational, and a movement towards a higher consciousness. So if this is where we normally day to day deal with what we have to deal with, make our, study what we have to study, do the work that we have to do, take care of those that we have to take care of, that's on a very conscious, minute by minute sort of way of understanding. But when we move to a higher level of conscience, that's when things start to make sense. It's not just about doing, it's about understanding, about being in the world, about making sense and that sort of thing. And so agape love is a movement towards that higher level of consciousness. Again, it's aspirational. We probably can't walk out the door today and all be able to do agape love. I think we can, though, understand what it is and move towards it. And most important, I think, is to understand how important it is. So this next bullet, to me, says it all. Love at all times is healing. So no matter what the devastation or the physical sense the person has, if they can turn all that energy into love, which that's what most people do when they get in situations like that, then it's healing. It may not heal entirely, but it gives the relief that's needed for that person at that time. So I think you have to be available for it. You can't just expect it to happen. But at the same time, if we're moving towards that, I think the way our body works, it responds to what it needs. And if we can provide it with the fuel, which is not only food, but in this case, love. And sometimes you hear vitamin L, vitamin love. It's amazing what love does in terms of helping us to be healthy and to heal. Maybe agape love is all we really need. So as we think about how helpless and hopeless we feel sometimes, if we can move that thought to agape love and being able to understand what that is and move towards it, that in itself is curative. So the next series of slides is on recovery. And so you may ask, recovery from what? We all can use recovery to overcome traumas that we've experienced in our life, the losses and grief we're experiencing or have experienced, disappointments, lack of confidence, anger, fear, and many other life challenges. So if we can think about these sorts of issues, the loss and grief, the trauma, the anger, the lack of confidence, and do something with those, that something would be think in terms of recovery from this, recovery from that disappointment. Maybe you were betrayed by a best friend or a spouse or a girlfriend, boyfriend. How do you get beyond that betrayal? How do you do that? Recovery, a recovery format or a recovery path is that we're going to describe in just a couple of minutes, is a way forward out of suffering. So recovery is a way forward out of suffering from the above list and many other challenges that life presents. So what is recovery? It's a movement away from self-centeredness toward agape love and transcendence and social interest. So if we can get away from our suffering, our pain, our grief, and the self-centeredness that is, and move towards agape love and transcendence and social interest, then that's what recovery it looks like. It's a way of being in the world that gets us outside our own ego, our own self-centeredness, and allows us to move in a recovery process. And so that pain and that hurt are much less significant. That betrayal, it can be forgiven and things of that nature. So benevolence toward all and a contribution to the greater good is basically the endpoints, not the endpoints, but the goal of a recovery path. So recovery requires active seeking. It's not a passive activity. Recovery doesn't come to you. You have to pursue. It requires active seeking. Recovery is in great part a search for meaning. So we talked about meaning and purpose last week. And in fact, if we can live a life that matters and know what those goals are for living a life that matters, becomes extremely helpful when we're experiencing grief and loss and trauma. When we experience suffering, a way out is understanding what our purpose and what our meaning is. And that's part of active recovery seeking, actively seeking recovery. It's also a desire to move beyond our current state. Our current state might be grief, it might be anger, it might be unforgiveness. And a desire to move beyond that current state is part of the action that's required for recovery. It also requires a willingness to seek forgiveness and to give forgiveness. There's enormous power in asking and giving forgiveness. that in itself can be very, maybe not curative, but puts us in the path or continues our path in recovery. And then the last bullet is relinquish control to gain control. So there's a serenity prayer that goes something like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So let me say that one more time. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So that wisdom to know that we can't control everything, but there is things we can control. And so go do that. Control those things that you can, but give up on trying to control those that you cannot. There's a life force that I think most of us understand in some respect that's greater than us. And so how can we control that? We may be able to solicit it. We may be able to help move forward understanding that, but we can't control it. What can we control? We can control ourselves. We control our reaction to things that happen to us. And how do we do that? In the recovery process, through the sense of purpose and meaning, seeking forgiveness and giving forgiveness, a desire to move around beyond that current state. So relinquishing control to gain control is a very important concept for the recovery path. And recovery, excuse me, and recovery is also a spiritual path. So it requires faith in a higher power, a spirit, a God, etc. Belief in the non-material. In other words, mysticism or spiritualism, not just believing that this is all there is, this world. It's all physically defined and there is nothing beyond it. That would be materialism. So a belief in non-materialism or mysticism or spiritualism is required for this particular recovery path. And then finally, service. Recovery requires altruistic service. I do for the greater good. Okay. I think that's very similar to what we've been talking about with social interest. So at any rate, you kind of get a sense of what the recovery path looks like. So in conclusion, suffering is just suffering unless we find meaning in suffering. Love will heal, and recovery from life is through a spiritual path that moves from self-centeredness toward agape love. I hope those 3 bullets kind of give you a nice view for the last 15 or 20 minutes that we've been talking about this topic. Okay, when we come back, I'll be talking about our last concept for tonight, and that is legacy. Thank you. Sure, third one, and this one's called legacy. And I didn't write this definition down, but I just want to give it to you. And so you, in case legacy isn't translating very well, this is the definition that I would use to define the word legacy. It's the long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc., that took place in the past or of a person's life. So I'll read that one more time again. The long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc., that took place in the past or of a person's life. So we'll go back to this definition if we need to, but that's the general definition of what legacy is. And so I'm going to go to the PowerPoint now. There we go. Okay. So this is a quote that we'll start off this section with. We transmit our wisdom to future generations. This process not only seeds the future, but crowns an elder's life with worth and nobility. So one of the ways that I want us to be thinking about legacy is towards the end of this life. And it doesn't matter if we're materialist or not. I think it's a lot easier, end of life is a lot easier for the non-materialists, in my opinion, but I'm sure they might, materialists might have a different opinion. But at any rate, as we go towards the end of our life, and I'm 70 right now, I'm not sure how close I am to the end of my life, but I'm certainly closer to the end than I am the beginning, that's for sure. And I probably realistically don't have but 10, 15, maybe if I'm lucky, 20 years left. So I'm at that point where legacy is not just a word, but it's pretty much an action. So if this quote is correct, we transmit our wisdom to future generations. Yes, I think most of us would agree that in our life, that is part of our role, is to transmit what we know and our wisdom to the generations that are coming behind us. But this process not only seeds the future, that is that younger generation, but crowns an elder's life with worth and nobility. So the two words here that I want us to understand is that end of life, or towards the end of life, we are seeking worth and nobility. And that's certainly a role and a goal of that particular developmental period of life, looking for that or understanding what our worth and our nobility is. So in terms of aging, it's a developmental process that at very best ends with a higher state of maturity. And I think this is really true. My wife and I moved into a community in which it's all 55 or older. And when we moved here, of course, we were kind of towards the young end of that. Now we're about the middle or so. And, not too many more years, we'll be the elders of this elder community. So we see a lot of interesting aspects of aging. And of course, we see death a lot closer and a lot more often than we would if we were in a younger neighborhood. And there's pros and cons to being where we are, but we love being where we're at, in part because I think we can appreciate this developmental process of aging in a much different way than if we were living in our single homes and with neighbors that were younger and older and in between and all that kind of business. So older adults are developing, hopefully, new perspectives. They're redefining their self and they're redefining their relationships. They're starting to understand the big existential questions and with joy exploring these, not as a nagging, is there life after death that may have plagued us in our teens and our 20s and our 30s and our 40s. But now there's a joy in exploring this and understanding this. So that these are all the kind of the positive aspects of this aging, developmental aging aspect. And then some other behaviors of aging is generally, not always, we have, I think, 61 people living in the building that we live in. We certainly don't know every one, but we also know that some are just so giving and less self-occupied, where others are still very self-occupied. And a lot of that has to do with their age. So as a person becomes older, I think there's much less of a need to be self-occupied. There's also decreased interest in superficial social interactions. So there's a seeking of more sincere and genuine social interactions than maybe in previous times. There's a diminished desire for material things and an intensified need for positive solitude and reflection. Uh, These all sound pretty good. And now, of course, everybody's going to experience these a little bit different. And I think if we embrace this developmental part of our life, if we really move into it, understanding what our needs are and this and that, that can be an extremely positive experience. But on the other hand, there's a lot of negative aspects about aging, our diminished physical ability, or diminished mental ability, our diminished, our kind of our bodies are not as efficient and effective as they have been in the past. We have to work a lot harder to have good health as our body ages. As the body ages, it changes, and we have to be able to adapt to that. Another quote, this one from Janice Hall. Now I find myself standing at a crossroads between old and young, between the anxiety of youth and the wisdom of age. What can I tell others on this road? Find God within yourself. Start making your peace with death and find the joy in life. If most of you are on the young side or moving into, well, I wouldn't say middle age. I think most of you, from what I can tell, are pretty young. And that should make this quote even more relevant to you, because this is a blueprint. This is a plan. This is a way of kind of going through your younger years and your middle years with some pretty good wisdom. Find God within yourself. Start making your peace with death and find the joy in life. If we can do those three things, I think we'll be pretty happy with ourselves as we age. Often in the final months or years, older community members may show behaviors that look like depression, dementia, or disengagement, when in fact, what is being observed is a cosmic shift to a transcendent perspective, a natural progression in aging. This process should be understood as actively restoring the soul. So the idea here is that as a person does get closer and closer to their time of leaving this world, there is maybe a sense of what looks like from the outside disengagement, or what looks like from the outside depression or dementia, when in fact it's not. It's a natural progression in aging, kind of a movement away from things that just don't have any relevance anymore, to now looking toward what is in the soul anticipates. So a restoring of the soul is what this often what looks like dementia, or looks like depression, or looks like disengagement, in fact is a restoring the soul. Another quote, our most important task is to help elders become our teachers again, and to restore the broken connection amongst the generations. And so this is something that I'm fairly interested in and have studied somewhat, and that is generational differences. What creates generational differences? Usually circumstances of life. For example, my parents grew up in the Depression, which was a very difficult time for most people. This was in the late 1920s, early 1930s. And that's when they were very young. They were teenagers during that period of time. And then right after the Depression came World War II. And most males fought in World War II. And then, of course, many died. My father was drafted before Pearl Harbor. He spent the entire time of the war in the Army, most of it as a infantryman in Europe. So he had it pretty tough, and many of that generation did. It's been phrased in the United States as the greatest generation ever. Well, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that they had different challenges than their children did, that being me. My generation has had different challenges than my children's generations or the generation following that. So each generation has its own burden, and it has its own way of looking and being in the world based on oftentimes what's going on in the world. So one of our most important tasks is to help elders, that is people that are older, become our teachers again and restore the broken connection amongst the generations. So it's inviting storytelling from the older generation. There's a lot of wisdom that people gather towards the end of their life. My brother, who's 9 years older than myself, is a great storyteller, and it'd be very sad if his stories are not somehow passed down to that next generation. And that's, my wife and I kind of feel that that's one of our jobs, is to help with this communication, at least within our own environment. We have about a half a dozen people that are below us in the next generation. And how can we pass on our wisdom without being parental, being more teachers? So that's something that hopefully our children will let us do, but it's something that we have to do. Each of us needs to know what restores our soul and have that understood and supported by our loved ones. So in other words, as we are growing older, how do we want to leave this world? We may not have a lot of choices, but we do have some control. And how do we articulate that? How do we make sure that that's understood by our loved ones? But also, as important perhaps, is we need to pass on to the younger generation what restores our soul, and have them understood, have that understood and supported. So that's a two-way responsibility. It's a responsibility of the elder to be able to know what restores, and then it's the responsibility of the generation behind to understand that and support that. Another quote: "My sense of joy and appreciation for the world around me changed radically. My perception of nature and the world seemed to go from black and white to vivid color. What makes me laugh isn't that I notice the details, it's that I care so much, and I find inner joy from my discovery of this glorious aspect of life that has been there all along. I am in awe of the world God has created, and grateful that I am learning to simply sit and observe." And this is from a person who has experienced now life very differently because of their wisdom and longevity. They've gotten to a point where now they can understand what's really important, what's been there all along. I'm learning to simply sit and observe. So I hope you get the gist of that quote, of moving from a kind of a black and white world to a very vivid world of color. And I think that's exactly what can happen as we age and as we really feel and understand the nature of what we have learned in our 70 or 80 or 90 years of life. And another quote: "Aging, I believe, is a gift from the divine. Each day we wake and breathe, we are being showered with abundant life, and light brilliantly showered upon us and radiantly given." Okay, so there's Let's see if I can. I'm not sure how to do this. Okay. So I was going to try to, I think I can do it this way maybe. No, that didn't do it. Just do it. Huh, so close. Okay, so I'm just going to spend a couple minutes and try to wrap this up a little bit. And I think to do that, let's see if we can. There we go. Okay, so we talked about a lot, and I would like to do just a kind of a short recap, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So the name of our lecture tonight was Wellness, Agape Love, Suffering, and Legacy. So in terms of wellness, the way I like to look at it is that that's the top of the pyramid. And then the next layer down would be this kind of combination of suffering and agape love. So agape love is an antidote to help us kind of make it through our suffering. And then at the lower level, the base level, is this concept or idea of legacy. We're all going to live to some extent, to unless we die prematurely or die unexpectedly, I guess is the word that I mean to use. We will see and have an opportunity to make meaning of our life, our suffering, and if we have wellness and have worked the life tasks that we talked about at the very beginning of tonight's lecture, the love, work, friends, and a relationship with self and relationship with the cosmos, we'll have that optimal mental health or that wellness. And that is definitely going to give us an opportunity to experience, when we experience the suffering in our life, we can counter that suffering with agape love. And from that, the wisdom to be able to pass on through other generations. So some connection between all three. And I think we can also see the connection between, all four, and also what we talked about last week and the time before, that there's kind of a path or a through line, and that through line is what I hope is being transmitted as a very positive way of being in the world, using our resources and our assets that we have to be able to live more effectively. Okay, so I want to thank you very much for your paying attention, which I'm sure that you did, and I hope that the discussion that follows will elucidate some of the key points. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that some people may have some problem about the video. Mm, I will send the link to make you can see the video again. Then I Professor Mark asked me to ask you guys some questions, so I'm looking for some response about my question, about some question. If you are okay, please turn on your camera. Um, Guys, do you need take a break to go to the toilet or take a cup of water? Do you need a small break? Yes. Okay, then how about we come back 10 minutes later? Then maybe later I will send you the video to help some people who cannot see the video very well. You can see the video again. Okay, see you 10 minutes later. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that the video is not very, I didn't work it very good because I got the video a little bit late. But I have some question for everyone. Could you think about what is Kabbalah and how do you think about Kabbalah? The first question is how does Kabbalah differ from other form of love? I need someone to help us to remember the stuff we discuss in these videos. Kabbalah is a type of love which is different from romantic love and family love. Then, as your perspective, what does it mean by Kabbalah? I want to invite at least one or two students to help everyone remember what does it mean by Kabbalah.
I can say,
Oh, please.
according to what Professor said, it is uh, unconditional love. I can hear myself.
Yes, we can hear your voice.
I mean, I can also hear myself. Why is this? It's like echo.
Oh, yup. It means not. It means a type of love that is not selfish, but for human beings.
Yeah. And he also said that it is almost impossible to have this kind of love for human being.
Mm, yup. Um, it is a type of love that is very unique and not very common or we can see in everyday life. Then when can you give do you think godly love is something that can be nurtured or it is an innate quality? Can we nurture a kind of feeling of godly love? How do you think about it? Some people uh, have godly love, but some people didn't behave like that way. Do you think godly love is something that we can nurture or it is something innate we born with? How do you think about it? I want to invite some students to talk about your opinion, but I think there is no standard answer. But how do you think about it? Is it possible to behave in godly love for you or for anyone? Please try. You are born with
Professor
it
Steer,
or you need. Okay.
I'm Fong Yi. Okay, I just want to try. The first I heard from agape love is actually to be my understanding is a Christian terms, but after I joined for these things, so I think agape love is, to me, it can be the love from the parents to the child, and something like the husband, the love to the wife as well. Because I came across an experience that I fall so-called a critical illness 3 years ago, and then I admitted to hospital and had a so-called quite a major surgery. But my husband take care of me unconditionally. Although we can say that we are, by law we are husband and wife, but to a certain husband and wife, it doesn't mean that when the wife sick, then the husband definitely will taking care of the wife. So after 20 years marriage, so we came across this kind of like sickness, and maybe not so rich in the terms of our life, but we can stay along with each others when we have this kind of like challenge, the life challenge. Yeah, to me, that is my understand of agape love between the parents to the child and the husband and wife. Yeah, thank you.
I think when love is not selfish, then it could be a type of godly love. If the love is not so selfish, even between wife and husband, there is a possibility to uh, exist a kind of love which is godly love. If your caring or your husband caring is not only focused on themselves, but then it could be a kind of godly love. So godly love is not so common, but it's not there in human society, I think. Sometimes human can be uh, very, sometimes human can be not selfish at all. But not always, but it can happen. Then do you think Kabbalah is something that we can nurture, or is something some people born with, but some people didn't have it?
Actually, I want to add on is actually I see some agape love from volunteers, like duty volunteers. They will help those that they really don't know them. They just want to help those who are suffering. Yeah, but this one is not only for Buddhists, and we also learn from Christian, because they will really care for those who are really needs helps or anything. So this is really, to me, is agape love without any like returns from the needy, or anything that they want to get from them. So just to help when they see someone need helps. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Kabbalah offers us a form of love that we didn't think about, because it is not usually the type of love we saw on the drama movie or in the on the newspaper, but it reminds us that we can do something like that in school or in some service. And when next question is about when do you see a kind of teachers mention about a kind of feeling that is a feeling of awe. A feeling of awe refers a feeling of great respect, sometimes mixed with fear or surprise. Then, when or where did you see did you feel a feeling of awe? Have you ever have you ever have a feeling of awe? When and where? Can you give us an example? Please. When and where have you ever feel a sense of awe? Actually, my daughter is not very healthy when he was born. Well, he didn't hear very well. But after a few years, I found that his healing ability become much better. But usually people cannot recover from hearing impairment. But he suffered for that, but he recovered from it. So sometimes when we see this miracle, I feel a sense of awe because I find how hard he tried to recover from the suffering, because when he didn't hear very well, he need wear a machine on her ear, uh, and he wear that machine probably for 3 or 4 years. So he wear the machine to hear other people's voice for a long time. But when she enter elementary school, she recover, and she didn't need that machine. And finally we give the machine for free to other people. We are very happy, but we know some people are still suffer for this kind of disability. But she is so lucky to recover from hearing impairment. But most people didn't cannot do it because miracle didn't happen always. But when I think about his experience, I understand how hard she tried to recover from his problem. At that time, I think God, or maybe some spiritual, give her an opportunity to hear well and to become a normal person. But however, she didn't hear very well. She still hear the when we speak, her voice for her, the voice is small. So she need try very hard to understand other people. But however, she did a very good job. So this is the moment that I feel a sense of awe, because human cannot do it. If we lose our eyesight, we cannot recover. It's same for hearing impairment. So when or where have you ever feel a sense of awe? You feel very, you feel a sense of respect and surprise, and maybe it sounds like a miracle for you, or maybe you see something that you that deserve respect. I want to invite one or two students, please. I think in hospital we so many miracle, and some people try very hard to recover from his or her suffering. Or maybe you see something happen in your students, and at that moment you respect your students. Or maybe in your parents.
Okay, I'd like to.
Please.
Right now, I don't remember it as a owl, like what owl means. But I think back then I had this feeling. Um, Once I was going somewhere on bike, motorbike, and but I had an accident on the road, and the road was very very dangerous road. Heavy vehicles also on that road, but fortunately, um, nothing happened. Nothing serious happened on that day. There was no vehicles in front or back of me. So it was not big accident. Even if I have had a lot of many accidents in that road. So I thought in that time I must have felt very grateful. But if I remember now, I don't feel it is like it was an accident.
So you didn't get hurt in that accident.
I get hurt a little, but it could be worse because the road was very dangerous. It was a road. It was not
I
big road,
see.
but a big
Yeah.
many big vehicles run in that road.
Actually, we have graduate students in this program, educational program. She he have a car accident and hurt her brain. Most people don't believe he can live, but finally he lived after 6 months. Um, 6 months staying in hospital, but finally she leave hospital. Most people consider his 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 experience is a miracle, But however, when he entered our program, his behavior sometimes look not okay as a professional teacher, because his accident leave him some trauma. I think his brain is still get hurt, didn't recover very well. But however, he recovered and he can speak as a normal person. But his language skill is still a little bit poor, I think. To be a professional teacher. Before car accident, he is a Chinese teacher. He teach Chinese in high school. However, although his behavior, his language is still not very good, but I can feel that he tried very hard to behave like a normal person and want to get his ability back. He tried very, very hard. So if I consider his effort to recover from suffering, I think I also feel a sense of awe. But I think you are good because you also recover from that car accident. Does it leave you any problem?
No, it was not car accident. It was motorbike accident.
Oh, so you are quite lucky, I think, because car accident happen every day. Um, is there any example of a sense of awe you ever feel in your life? Okay, if uh, okay, consider the next question. Um, okay, if you can leave something after you pass away, after you die, what you will leave to other people? What will you leave as a legacy for other people or for next generation after you die? Consider the definition of legacy. What you will give as a legacy for the other people. I think because some people in our lesson are teachers, so maybe they will leave their wisdom, knowledge to their students, even they are not here, they pass away. Teachers still leave some knowledge and wisdom for their people, for the society, for the community, for their trip, for whatever. But if you consider the definition of legacy, what you will leave, what will you leave as a legacy for other people? I want to invite one of our students to respond. Then we can end this lesson. From your perspective, what you will leave for other people as a legacy. Please. Xinyu or Jiarong, what you will leave other people as a legacy.